Camping in the woods seems peaceful until the night falls. Out there, every sound, every step has its own story, and some of those stories should never be heard alone.
I never believed the old stories about the Appalachians. My dad used to say, those mountains are older than sin, and they remember every soul that passes through. I always thought it was just one of his sayings, something he told me to keep me from sneaking out into the woods as a kid. But last summer, I found out he wasn't wrong, not even close. It started as a normal weekend trip, just four of us me, my best friend Ethan, and our friend Sarah, along with Jess. I was the storyteller, the one who always carried too many books and not enough common sense. Ethan was the joker, always with a grin, never serious about anything. Sarah was careful, cautious, the kind who triple checked the beer spray. And Jess. Jess was fearless, sharp tongued, the kind of person who would walk straight into the dark just to prove she wasn't scared. We wanted a break from everything: phones, work, school, this glamorous world of AI. We packed up, drove deep into the mountains, and set out into the trees. The trail was quiet, too quiet. The further we hiked, the less sound there was. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Still, we laughed, we joked, and by late afternoon we found a clearing with an old fire ring that looked decades abandoned. That's where things began. We set up camp. The fire ring stones were carved with strange markings. Ethan joked that it was hillbilly runes and just shot back. Or maybe they are warnings, my friend. We laughed, but my stomach twisted. That night we sat around the fire telling stories. Ethan's were funny, Sarah's were cautious, Jess's were brutal. The fire cracked, sparks rising into the black sky. At one point, I wandered away into the trees. Just to relieve myself, the forest was still, so quiet I could hear my own breathing. That's when I saw it, a pale shape, like a face, between the pines. I swung my flashlight towards it. Nothing, just branches. I hurried back to camp. Later, as we lay in our tents, whispers drifted through the trees. At first, I thought it was wind, but Sarah grabbed my arm. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I listened harder. They weren't just sounds, they were words. Too soft to make out, but words all the same. We barely slept. The next day, we hiked deeper. Sarah said we should turn back, but Jess laughed. What, because of spooky wind? By dusk, we'd wandered miles off the main trail. We built another fire, ate our dinners, tried to act normal. Then Jess froze. "Do you hear crying?" she asked. We all fell silent. It was there, faint at first, then clearer. A woman's sobs drifting through the pines. Ethan muttered, "It is probably some crazy local." The crying stopped. Then, from right behind us, a voice repeated Sarah's exact words: "We need to leave. Now." But it wasn't Sarah's voice. Not exactly. It was off, distorted, like someone wearing her voice as a mask. We spun around. The firelight flickered against the trees. Nothing there. That night we sat up in shifts, watching the woods. The whispers circled us. Sometimes they came from far away, sometimes they came from just beyond the glow of the fire. When I finally dozed off and woke again, the sun was rising. Ethan was gone. His tent was shredded open from the inside, his sleeping bag empty. We tore through the clearing screaming his name. Hours later, we found him sitting against a tree, alive but wrong. His eyes were glassy, his face blank. Ethan just shouted, shaking him. Slowly he blinked. Finally he whispered, "She's so sad." "Who?" Jess demanded. Ethan's eyes flicked past us into the woods. "The woman. She wants us to stay." We tried to drag him back, but he fought, weak but determined. He muttered all day, talking to people we couldn't see. Sarah wanted to leave immediately, but Jess argued we couldn't carry Ethan out in that state. "We just need to wait until morning," she said. That night, as the fire burned low, the forest shifted. Literally, it shifted. Shadows moved between the trees, dozens of them, watching us. And then, she appeared. The woman. Her hair was tangled, her dress ragged, her face was pale, hollow. She raised one hand, and all the whispers stopped. Ethan stood, rope still tied around his wrists, and smiled, a horrible, empty smile. He walked towards her like a child running to his mother. Jess screamed his name. He didn't even glance back. We ran. God help us, we ran blindly through the forest. Branches tore at our arms, roots caught our feet. Jess pulled me forward, Sarah stumbling behind. The whispers, they followed us. Sometimes they sounded like strangers, sometimes like our own voices. We burst through the trees into another clearing. I spun around. Sarah was gone. 1 second she was right behind me, the next, nothing. No sound, no scream, just gone. By dawn, Jess and I stumbled onto a dirt road. A truck rattled past and we flagged it down, begging the driver for help. Rangers searched for days. They found no Ethan, no Sarah, not even our campsite. The fire pit, the tents, all gone, as if we'd never been there at all. Jess won't talk about it. She moved to the city, refuses to go near the woods. But me, oh no, I hear it sometimes. At night when the house is quiet, I hear the same whisper, "We need to leave now." And sometimes I hear crying, not from the woods, from inside my house, from inside my room, sometimes underneath my bed. I used to think my cousin Luke collected ghost stories the way other people collect parking tickets, carelessly and often. If there was a roadside plaque, a cursed bridge, a haunted diner with a waitress who'd seen things, or anything that smelled ghosts, he'd drag me there like I didn't have a choice. That summer, his obsession had a name: the Lantern Man. The legend was old Ozark stuff, railroad days, a worker trapped in a tunnel collapse, body never found. Ever since, folks claimed a lantern wandered the woods at night, bobbing between the trees, looking for a way home. If you followed it, the story went, you didn't come back on your own. As simple as that. I wasn't superstitious. I was 22, stubborn, and convinced the only thing that really haunts the woods is heat and ticks. But Luke begged, and Kyla, his girlfriend, rolled her eyes in that way that meant she'd go anyway because she loved him more than she hated camping. So it was the three of us, me, Luke, and Kyla, driving a rusty, dusty Jeep towards a dot on a map Luke had highlighted in jittery Sharpie. We reached the trailhead late, light melting into green shadow. The Ozark Hills rose around us like sleeping animals. The air smelled like damp leaves and iron. We hiked in, found a dry creek bed, and pitched camp where the trees thinned and the sky gave us a ragged patch of stars. Luke couldn't even wait for the fire to settle before launching into it. Tunnel collapsed in 1889, he said, waving a marshmallow like a conductor's baton. Benton line, the foreman swore he counted everyone out, but one man didn't answer roll. Some say he dug up, some say he dug down, some say Kyla groaned, some say they made it up to sell postcards, babe. But she leaned in closer to the flames all the same. The first night was normal enough. Crickets, fire pop, tree frogs. I lay in my tent later, listening to the breathing of the forest. Once or twice I thought I heard feet on leaves, but it was probably there. Probably. Morning came silver and damp. We hiked a loop Luke had marked, a path that shepherded us past rusty fence posts and a cut where the railroad used to run. The trench was a bruise in the earth, overgrown but still a line, still a scar. We ate jerky by a stand of sycamores and took dumb pictures. Kyla tried to sucker punch a knot on a tree that looked like a face. We laughed. We were loud with daylight bravado. By dusk, we were back at camp and the night exhaled. The fire threw a coin of light. The rest of the world retreated. Luke told the story again, differently this time, like he'd remembered new parts. They say the lantern man doesn't cast shadows, he whispered, and if you shout your name, he'll say it back, like a question, like he's not sure he got it right. Kyla shook her head. If I see some guy with a lantern out here, I'm running him over with the jeep. We laughed, but softer. The forest settled. An owl called once, twice. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. That's when I saw the light. It was way out, just beyond the far trunks, yellow and steady. Not a flashlight's jitter, not fireflies. It moved, slow, a patient sway like someone walking with purpose, lantern hooked low. I froze. Luke didn't. His smile was too big, nervous around the edges. That's him, he said, almost reverent. Or it is a camper, I said. But my voice felt like it didn't belong to me. We called out, "Hey, you okay?" No answer, just that steady bobbing. Kyla's jaw set. We are not following that. Her hand found Luke's sleeve. Hey, we're not. The light stopped. For a second, I thought it turned towards us, like a head would if the light were a face. Then it winked out. We stood there, rind of firelight on our boots, listening to the dark. After a while, Luke tossed another log on. Too casual, nobody said much after that. The next day, Kyla and I teamed up to keep Luke busy. We walked the creek upstream, poked at raccoon prints, cataloged rocks like we were 8 years old. We found an old milepost marker half buried and took turns making fun of how history never picks up after itself. When the sun tipped, we headed back. I don't know when I realized we were circling. The path was the same, but wrong. We passed a deadfall we'd stepped over earlier, except now the splintered ends were fresh. We crossed the creek at our own footprints and then crossed it again. Dusk peeled the color from everything. The woods felt smaller, like walls narrowing. By the time we broke into the clearing of camp, I felt wrung out. We cooked in silence. The night came in close. We didn't have to wait long. The lantern slid between two hickories like it had always been there, closer this time. 20 yards out, then 15. I could see the glass. The flame inside wasn't quite right. It moved too smoothly. No flicker, just a steady gold pulse. It swung left, then right, waiting. I am going, Luke said. Kyla grabbed his arm. No, you're not. He peeled her fingers off gently, like prying a child from a toy. If it is a hiker, we help. If it is something else, I just want to see, that's it. He looked at me. Come on. I should have said no. Instead, I stood up. 10 minutes, I said, no more. Kyla swore and climbed up too. If you idiots die, I'm not explaining that to your mothers. We took our lights, but for some reason, I didn't switch mine on. The lantern seemed to disapprove of competition. It drifted backwards, deeper, leading. The ground sloped, the leaf litter slick with damp. I kept watching that yellow eye and not my feet, and once I slid, palms grinding bark and grit. We reached the old rail cut in the lantern's wash. The trench looked like a throat. On the far wall, someone, somewhen, had carved words into a sycamore scar. Help me home. The knife marks were old, weather smoothed, filled with dark. Luke reached out like he touched the letters and then stopped. The lantern clicked off as if pinched. We were blind. Then the night returned in gray and shadow and our breaths. Behind us, something moved. We spun, branches clicked like bones. My flashlight finally stuttered on. Thin, embarrassed light, but nothing was there. No tracks, no glow, just us and the long cold seam of the earth. We went back slow. When we reached camp, the fire had slumped. Kyla threw kindling like she wanted to hurt it. None of us said anything for a long time. I woke too quiet, the kind you only get when the world is waiting. The sky was alit. My watch said 3:11 a.m. Luke's tent was a hump in the dark. Kyla's was still. I turned over, closed my eyes, and that's when I heard it. A foot on leaves, soft and careful, close enough to be inside the idea of camp. I held my breath. The zipper on Luke's tent rasped. Slow. A shape passed, black against black. I heard fabric whisper, a step, another step. My mouth filled with the taste of old pennies. I don't know how long I waited when I finally moved. The sky had gone from black to iron. I stumbled out, damp air crawling. Kyla met me outside her tent, eyes glassy. He's gone, she said. Her voice had edges. We found tracks at the edge of camp, the barest indentation where someone had stood and turned and walked into the trees. We followed until the ground gave up their story. The woods took them in like water swallowing a thrown in stone. We shouted until my throat burned. Luke. The sound came back to us in smaller pieces. Somewhere out there, something made a noise like a lantern handle clicking against metal. By late morning, we admitted what we already feared. Kyla's hands shook so badly she couldn't tie a knot. We packed what we could carry and left the rest. We aimed for the trailhead and found only more trees. The sun slurred across the sky. By afternoon, a sickness bloomed in me, the sense that the forest had shifted slightly to keep us. We walked past a snag and I recognized and then passed it again, like a loop that didn't know how to finish. The light found us before night did. It was farther out now, like it didn't need to be close because we were already caught. Kyla stopped, shoulders quivering. No, she said to it, voice shredded. No, no, no. The lantern stilled. The flame did a slow inhale, a slow exhale. Then it spoke. At least, that's how my brain filed what happens next. Because I can't explain the thing I heard. My name shaped carefully, a little wrong, like a mouth learning how. It rolled the sounds in the night and offered them back to me. Mark. Kyla clapped her hands over her ears and screamed. The lantern went out. We ran blind, branches whipped, my shins found rocks. Once I ate dirt so hard I saw light. We didn't stop until the trees broke and the sky showed a single star like a puncture wound. We didn't stop after that either. We found the jeep at dawn by accident. The way you find a coin in a couch you thought you'd already checked. The keys were where Kyla had left them. The engine turned over like a prayer answered. We drove to the ranger station with the windows down, like we needed the world to be loud and real. The ranger who took our report listened without nodding, without any surprise. He called in a search team that went out with dogs and radios and a kind of purposeful hope I couldn't match. They found nothing. Not a boot print, not a broken branch, not the dry creek where we'd camped. When they asked us to lead them back, the trailhead looked wrong, as if the woods had been rearranged while we slept. Kyla left the next day, a thready apology caught in her throat. She called me once from a city far away and told me she had nightmares about yellow light moving behind her eyelids. Then she stopped calling. I drove home. I told myself I'd done what I could. I told myself rational things because rational things are a raft, and the river doesn't care if you can swim. Weeks passed. I put the story in a box at the back of my mind and taped it shut. Then, one night, my apartment went dark in a summer storm. The city guttered and the building groaned. I lit a candle. The flame leaned and wobbled and learned the room. Out of habit or madness, I slid to the window and looked down into the alley. Something moved there, slow, patient. A small gold circle drifted along the bricks. Not a flashlight, not a cigarette. It slid past the dumpster, paused beneath my window, and lifted slightly, like a man bringing a lantern to his face. The light was washed up over my chin, my mouth, my eyes, my thighs, everything warm. It didn't flicker. Through the rain, thrum, and thunder, I heard a voice say a name. It sounded like mine. And then, soft and close as breath, Luke's voice, Luke's cadence, Luke's impatient laugh, whispered, "Help me home." I didn't open the window, I didn't answer, but I haven't slept more than an hour at a time since, because some nights the light doesn't come to the alley, some nights it stops just outside my door, a warm pulse under the crack, waiting for me to stand up and follow. I wasn't much of a joiner, but last fall I signed up for a backpacking trip with strangers I met online. A group of 5 headed into Wyoming's Wind River Range. The appeal was simple: days without phones, no buzzing notifications, no boss emails, just mountains, firelight, and silence. The group was a mixed bag. Kyle, a cocky college kid with too much energy, Melissa, a nurse who'd done hikes all over the country, Jenna, quiet, bookish, always scribbling in her journal, and Dave, a grizzled guy in his 40s who said very little but knew every knot, every bird call. Then there was me, just glad to get out of my head for a while. The first night was ordinary. We ate instant noodles, laughed about bad trail bathrooms, and passed a flask around. The fire burned low, sparks rising into a sky so crowded with stars it looked fake. I remember thinking, this might be the best decision I've made in years. I had no idea what was coming. On the second night, camped in a meadow beneath jagged cliffs, I woke to footsteps, not the soft shuffle of someone sneaking out to pee, heavy, deliberate, crunching across the frost. I unzipped my bag and saw Kyle, eyes wide open, trudging toward the ridge. His arms hung loose at his sides. He didn't carry a flashlight, didn't respond when I whispered his name. Then Melissa emerged from her tent, then Jenna. They all moved the same way, stiff, mechanical, like puppets dragged by invisible strings. They filed into a line and climbed the goat path up the cliff. I thought about shaking Dave awake, but what would I even say? Hey, everyone is sleepwalking like zombies. So I followed without waking him up. A huge mistake, anyways. The path zigzagged up to a ledge maybe 50 feet high. I pressed myself against the rock and watched. They stopped at the very edge, toes dangling over the drop. The moon painted them bone white. For a full minute, none of them moved, just stared into the night. Then, in perfect unison, they turned their heads toward me. I swear their eyes glowed faint silver, like they were reflecting a light I couldn't see. I ran back to camp and buried myself in my sleeping bag, heart jackhammering. By morning, all three were back in their tents. They woke up groggy but swore they hadn't laughed. When I pressed, they laughed it off, but Carl's boots were caked in cliff dust. Melissa's knuckles were scraped raw, and Jana's journal, her precious journal, was filled with words written in her neat hand over and over again. We walk, we walk, we walk. Time and again, we walk. I forced myself to stay awake, sat by the fire until the stars blurred, but the exhaustion won. When I opened my eyes again, the meadow was empty. They were climbing the ridge once more, all four of them. This time, even Dave, the silent one, and this time something led them. A tall, thin figure at the front of the line, its arms swung too far, joints bending wrong, head cocked like it was listening to music only it could hear. The others followed without hesitation, glassy-eyed pilgrims. I ran after them, gravel crunching underfoot. Stop, I screamed. What the hell are you doing? They didn't answer. Only Kyle turned, his mouth moving, but the sound that came out wasn't his. It was dozens of voices speaking at once, layered and warped. Time to walk. They reached the cliff edge again. The figure raised its arm impossibly long, and they leaned forward. I lunged, grabbed Dave's pack, yanked him backward. He hit the ground hard, thrashing awake. The others didn't stumble, didn't hesitate. They walked straight off the cliff and vanished. No scream, no impact, no bodies at the bottom, just gone. As simple as that. Dave and I fled before sunrise, stumbling down trails that seemed to twist and change beneath our feet. By noon, we emerged onto a ranger road. Rangers searched the cliffs. No sign of Melissa, Jana, or Kyle. No footprints past the ledge. No broken branches, no disturbed soil. Just nothing. On the missing persons board at the station, their names were added to others. Old ones, too many. Dave refused to speak about it. He left town the next morning. I told myself I'd never seen foot in the mountains again. But the story didn't end there. A month later, I woke in my apartment, standing in the hallway, shoes on, backpack slung over one shoulder, no memory of leaving bed. Inside the pack, trail mix, flashlight, canteen, like I had packed for a hike in my sleep. It has happened 3 times since. Each time I wake closer to the door, once with the handle already in my hand, and last night I dreamed of the ridge again. the line of hikers. Only this time, I wasn't watching from below, I was in the line, walking, dreaming to lead it one day. But at the head, the tall figure turned back, its face pale, smooth, and blank. And somehow, beneath that faceless mask, I knew exactly who it was. It was my dream coming true. It was me that was leaving and leading that line.
After hearing these stories, would you ever camp again? Let the crib know. And for weekly horror stories, subscribe the channel and sleep with your eyes wide open.